I'm going to read from the opening chapter of The Poison Boy. This chapter features the main character, Dalton Fly, waking up from a poison-induced trance. He's a food taster. His job is to taste other people's food to see whether someone is poisoning it. And he's clearly eaten something dreadful that has caused him to wake up confused and disorientated. So this is the opening of the book. When the door crashed open, Dalton Fly was holding his breath in the shadows, his back pressed against the cool marble of a thick pillar, and his eyes pleading with a playing card. That lucky Jack, spattered in Benny's blood, had somehow saved his life. He couldn't leave it. From where he was hiding, Dalton could see the Jack's face staring at him, smudged in red. It was lying face up at the edge of the rug near the fireplace, perhaps a dozen strides away, Dalton thought. He blinked, and his vision smudged and blurred again. Everything was a wash of swimming shapes for a moment. He rubbed his eyes. There was blood on his hands and under his fingernails. Dalton was sure of one thing. 2 men had come into the room and they had pistols. He heard the click of a cap drawn back to shoot. "Kite almighty," one of them said, as he saw Benny Jinks ghosted. Benny was face down, a bag of bones in a bloody lake. He'd coughed himself inside out. He was still leaking in great scarlet pools. He was only 12. Whatever he'd been eating had pulled his guts to pieces. There was a long pause. Dalton's sight sharpened, his heart hammered, and his poisoned belly stung. He dropped slowly to a crawl, careful not to slip in all the wet. There was a lot of blood for such a tiny curled-up boy, and Dalton was soaked in it. It was in his face and nose, on his teeth, under his tongue. It was bitter and it was dark. His hair was thick and black with it. He felt sick again. He heard the creak of the men's leather boots as they stepped forward slowly with pistols aloft. One of them crouched by Benny, his knees popping, and touched the little boy's shoulder. He's still warm. Dalton peered at the contents of the tasting table, now flung across the thick rug. There were scattered bowls and plates. 2 gold-trimmed cushions had been spun away. A chair lay on its back. The smoky flame of a candle shuddered, making thick shadows wobble in grey archways. Perhaps Benny had thrashed around, screaming and gurgling as he choked. The crash and clatter of the devastation must have echoed through the halls and galleries. "Dreck," one of them swore, kicking something aside. "What a mess! The marcher needs to see this." There was further movement. Dalton wondered whether their pistols would be down yet. His hands shook madly. Benny's blood was cooling on his clothes and skin. His spit and guts were getting sticky. There was a chance now, Dalton thought. If the men were moving beyond the bulk of the table, searching the space near the windows at the far end of the room, he could stay in a low crawl and make it to his lucky Jack with a scramble and a stretch. He began to move forward, struggling to focus again. There was a silver jug on its side, rolled in deep red with a blur of bloody fingerprints. From somewhere outside came the endless low tolling of bells, church bells clanging over and over. The Jack was still winking impassively at him. Dalton moved slowly, hand over hand, trying not to breathe. He needed that card. "What was it, the wine?" one man said to the other. Dalton heard him lift a stopper from a bottle. He began to inch forward into their line of sight and glanced upwards. There were only a few strides beyond the table of food, 2 hazy silhouettes in the shadows. All they had to do was turn around, he thought, prickling with fear, and he was stagged. Kite nose, the wine, the fruit, the olives. There was a pause again. One man was examining the table closely now, his wide back hunched. Dalton tried to remember what it was he and Benny had last tasted, what it was that had killed Benny, where the poison had been hidden. He moved forward again, crawling slowly. "Something's killed him," the voice said. "The kid's coughed his whole belly onto the floor." "Ah, dreck," said the second. "My boots are covered in it." Around Benny, food was scattered. Dates, olives, fruit, 2 pale cheeses half wrapped, and wine. Dalton knew he'd been drinking wine. He could taste it through the blood on the back of his teeth. He didn't usually try the wine. He wasn't old enough, and neither was Benny Jinks. Oscar shouldn't have sent them.